Hello, I'm Miss Susan from Fountaindale Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make papier-mâché items from home that you can decorate. For this project, you will need a bowl, flour, all-purpose is fine, a 1 cup measuring cup, one cup water, a whisk to mix everything with. If you do not have a whisk, you can use a large fork, saran wrap, newspaper, and you can tear that newspaper into little strips. It's very easy to tear. Oh. If you'll be painting your object after you've made it, you will want to have some white typewriter paper or printer paper, and that also will need to be cut into strips the same size as your paper, your newspaper. If you want your item to look like leather, you will need a brown paper bag, and you'll want to cut that into strips and then crumple them up to give it a leather look before you put it on your form. Now, speaking of forms, there's lots of things that you can use for forms. Traditionally, a balloon is what is used. An inflated balloon is what traditional papier-mâché is made out of. But there are other objects you could also use from around the house. Anything that has a smaller base than the top, you want to make sure that your base is smaller than the top so that you can get it out. So here's a few ideas. These were all little candle holders at one time. Some Pyrex bowls, and you can see this has a real nice smooth edge to it. So Pyrex is a good idea. Those are my large ones. This is my small one. And this I found at the dollar store. A set of, let's see, 6 of these little plastic cups, and I'm going to use one of those plus a balloon today so I can show you making a small one and making a large one and what that will entail. The saran wrap will be necessary if you use one of these methods, or even a metal bowl or a mixing bowl. If you want to make a big papier-mâché, you can do that, but you will need the saran wrap. If you do a balloon, you will not need the saran wrap. Okay, so let's get started. First, we need to make our paste. So you take your bowl. I've already pre-measured the 1 cup of flour. So put that in your bowl. And then you're going to want to stir in a little bit of water at a time. This is a little bit more difficult to do than the paste, the straight glue and water one. But not everybody has a whole cup of glue laying around, but most people have some flour. So I figured this was the more economical one to do. And if you can see, I'm doing a little bit at a time and gathering a little bit of the flour at a time. So I'm doing it gradually, trying not to have lumps, but don't worry if there's lumps. Now, the ratio is 1 cup water to 1 cup of flour. But because some people's houses are drier or wetter, moister than others. That can vary. So we're just going to try to see where we're at and see what the consistency is. Now you can see it's turning into almost a pancake-like batter. I think I'm going to put a little bit more water in that. I think it's just a little thick. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit, just a drop or two, and thin that out a little. And like I said, you can use a fork for this stage if you want. That's better. So if you can see what that looks like. Okay. Now I have a ceiling fan going above me, so I have a feeling that may dry out a bit. So I am going, while we're working on the forms and talking about forms, I'm going to cover it with a plate. I'm just setting a plate on top. We're going to set that to the side, and we're going to talk about the different coverings that we're going to use, the different papers. So as I said, the one definite thing that you will want is newspaper. So one of the things I like to do is I just take a section of the newspaper and I start to rip, and about 1.5 inches is about where I want to be. And see, it's so easy to tear. I'm tearing through about 4 or 5 pieces at once. Now we're going to do a balloon, and we're going to do the small cup. For the small cup, you will want to tear them thinner because it's a shorter distance. And you'll want less, how do I say it? If you try to cover it with a large piece, it won't lay very flat. It'll lay flatter if you use a thinner piece. So we'll need some thin pieces for that. So you want to go real thin like that. And you just go down and down like that. And the same is true with, set those aside. The same is true for the white paper. So I'm going to show you how to do the white paper on the small cup. So I made thin strips. You can make nice thin little strips for that. Just cut them nice. This you will have to cut. You could probably tear them, but I wanted to make sure they were thin. So just cut them thin like that. And I'll show you how to do this. You're still going to use the newspaper, but the last layer will be the white, which will make it easier to cover it with paint. And then there's the paper bag we talked about. Now, if your paper bag has print on one side, like this one does, it's just from a food takeout place, you can use the other side, so that's okay. And we're going to put leather on the outside of the balloon so you can see what that is like. And we're just going to go like that. This is real easy. You could probably tear these. Oh, now I'm going to do a thicker part where the seam is. So the seam's a little more difficult. And another really cool thing, on the inside of the sides of this bag, there was this really cool print already on it. So you could do something like that. You could use the outside if you really liked the picture on the outside. So we have several options. So this is for my last thickness of the balloon. Like I said, the last layer. The rest of it can be done in newspaper. You need to do about 4 or 5 layers to get it nice and thick, so it will hold up. Because you're going to remove the form, you're going to remove the cup, and you're going to remove the balloon afterwards. So let's start with the balloon. Move that aside. You'll need some kind of bowl to hold the balloon in while you're working on it. I am going to have to turn the fan off. There, we don't want it going anywhere. So, first step, you've got your paste made, and it looks good. You're going to want to take and dip, let me make sure you can see what I'm doing. You're dipping the entire piece of paper, just one single thickness, into the paste. So I am doing that. Now this is going to get messy, and then just go like that. See? We just removed just a little bit. You just pull it through your two fingers, just like this. And now it's on there still, but very little. So we're just going to go like that. And this is going to get messy. That's okay. That's what this is about. So we're going to look for some more. I'm just going to keep going. Trying to get it all on there. Okay, so now I'm going to do it again. Yeah, it's all over the place. You might want your parents to help you cover your countertop with plastic. You can use an old plastic, an old plastic tablecloth that you're never going to use again, or that maybe you have an arts or crafts one that would be good. You can use a garbage bag, just a flat garbage bag. You don't open it up at all to put into a canister. You just lay the flat garbage bag on the counter. You can go outside and do this on the sidewalk. That would be a good one. If it's a really nice day, you don't want it to be rainy or too windy. You got to watch the wind, because your balloon will blow away. You don't want your balloon or your paper to blow away. So we just keep going. You want them to overlap a little bit with each other. Make sure they're overlapping a bit. See, like that. Okay, we're going to move on to the little cup. I will finish this when we're off camera, and we'll come back to that. We're going to go to this little cup. So I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. We have to cover this with saran wrap. So the only way for this to come back out is if you cover it with saran wrap. So I'm going to make it maybe double the thickness, just to be on the safe side. Unless you want to break whatever you're making, you can break what you're making out of there. You could do that. So if your form isn't something you need to keep, you can break it out. I don't suggest you break glass out. If you want to break the glass out, I would definitely have a parent do that for you. Now I just I folded over my saran wrap, that last piece, and now I have it over it. Yeah, you've got to use saran wrap. I almost forgot. So now we've got that ready, and now we're going to start layering. These are still good here. So you only need about half that size, because this is a small cup. So we're just going to do a couple of these to show you what to do. Just like that. And then we'll just keep on going. Remember, use the smaller ones. Now, you want to let these dry between each layer. And that is important because you don't want it to get gooey. You've got to let them dry. So we're just about done with this layer. Remember, I said about 4 to 5 layers is what you want. A lot of that will have to depend on what you plan on doing with the item. If you plan on using it as a bowl that you want to hold something heavy in it, then you will want that 5th layer. If you're using the brown paper bag as your last layer, you probably won't need as much because that is thicker. If you are using the white paper, the same thing. Now I'm going to wash my hands off and make sure that I remove all the excess of this, because my hands are now very messy. Oh, another item you can use to cover is wrapping paper. So if you have, old wrapping paper, or you want to save some special wrapping paper, you could make the inside layer the special wrapping paper, so that it's visible. That means you'd put it upside down on your form. If you want to see that wrapping paper through it, that's a really good way of saving special wrapping paper, and especially if it's somebody that was very special to you and maybe you give them a bowl. That would be a really cool thing. You could use these little bowls, put jewelry or little things in. Wrapping paper would be a really nice way of doing that for someone. You could inlay a picture in these. See, I'm making sure I'm going all the way to the bottom there. You want to make sure that you are getting all of it covered. Okay, that's pretty good for 1 layer on this one. I'm going to show you what I have. See how it's pretty much all covered. There's a few spots, but I'm not worried about that because I'm going to put more layers on this. So that's how that's going. And don't worry about it going too long over the edge, because you can trim the edge when we're done. So once we take everything off, we'll be able to do that. I now have about 4 layers of newspaper on my small cup, all thoroughly dried, nice and hard. And the balloon actually only has 2, but it's nice and hard. And I figured it was time to use the paper to make it look like leather, since this is much thicker than newspaper. We will start by working on this one. Set that down. Now, because we're using white printer paper, it's going to take a little longer to soak up that paste. You want to make sure it soaks it up. And the paper, the brown paper, will take even longer. So I'm going to do a couple of layers on camera for you to see what we're doing. I'm just doing the same exact thing. Now make sure you smooth it down. And then I will switch from this to the paper bag so that I can show you how to do that part. Bowls were real easy to do because I just have to drape them over and make sure that they are smooth. And something I forgot to mention earlier, because this is such a messy project, you will want to wear some clothes that you don't mind getting messy in. As you can see, I got messy. Okay, so now we're going to switch over. I'll finish that off camera. We're going to switch over to the brown paper. So the way you want to do this is you'll take a piece of brown paper, just like I did. You're going to cut them up into pieces, and then you're going to do that. You're going to squish them up like that, and then open them back up to give them all the wrinkles. Okay, you want to make sure they're nice and wrinkled. So we're going to set that into the, you can see that I put it in. It's not quite there yet. It's soaking it up. But you want to make sure you have it as soaked up as possible. Now these are shorter pieces. Oh, and look what I did. I put it on the other way. But that's okay. I'm going to do a couple like that. I think it'll be interesting. It'll add interest. I'm going to kind of go back and forth with them though. I don't want them all in one spot. I'm going to move those around. So here's a plain one. It had writing on one side, but it is plain. And you want to try and get as much of the paste as possible off right now because we're at the last step. I'm going to kind of get rid of that as much as possible. Just like that. And allow it to wrinkle. Okay, like that. Now I'm going to finish this off camera because it takes so long to do. It's a good afternoon project for you to do or sit outside and do. Be as perfect as you want or as messy as you want. So once your item is dry all the way, you want to make sure it's been dry for at least 24 to 48 hours is the best. We're going to take the balloon out first. I'll show you how to do that. There's a little bit that you left. We're going to cut that. Ooh. And what it should have done, if you heard it, is pull away from the sides and come right out, just like that. So now you have something with a little hole here. Now, I wasn't planning on doing anything special with this one. Maybe decorating it. You could draw a face on here, paint it. You could cut it in half and have two masks. You could cut the holes for the eyes and build up a nose on there, or put a foam nose, or even a pom-pom nose. But if you wanted, you could use these as little piñatas. Now, if you were going to do a piñata, I would advise you not to use the brown paper bag and just use a couple of layers of the newspaper. It'll make it a little easier to break open. At this point, at this stage with this item, you're not going to be able to do that. It's way too hard to break open. But so we'll color that in a moment. Let's move on to the small bowl that we did. So here's the small bowl. This was the other bowl that I was having hold on to the plastic wrap, and then the main bowl is in here. So we should be able to pull gently there, just like that. I'm going to pull out gently, and there's your bowl. feels pretty dry on the inside right now. And then remember we talked about how you don't have to worry about this part. All you have to do is take some scissors and start trimming it. If you need a parent to help you with this part, you can. They could use an X-Acto knife. It might be a little difficult to cut with scissors. And you just cut it around like so. I went pretty long. That's why I put a second bowl underneath to stand it up more. And just like that, you have a bowl. And we can paint the outside of this. We'll do that real quick. I have some paints I can show you. So you just take, you can just actually just take it back like that so you can keep it up like that. I've got some red, and I'm just going to put a few colors on here. Now, if you don't have paintbrushes, you can use a Q-tip. You can also use a sponge. Sponges will work. Ooh, I like this color. I like red. You can use sponges. You can use a leaf. You can almost paint with anything. So if you have like those little makeup sponges, maybe mom or your sister has little makeup sponges, they can use those. And that's about it. It's a pretty simple project. Okay. Well, as you can see, you can make forms out of just about anything. You can do bowls, you can do balloons, you can do cups, anything that you want to replicate that shape. Just remember, if you do not use a balloon, to use the saran wrap so that you can get the item back out. Otherwise, you have to break the item out. So I hope you had fun today making paper mache. For more fun Mess Fest videos, please see our YouTube page at fountaindale.org/YouTube. There are plenty more videos. Bye!